This is basically the Lego I fished out of this things from our actual films, unceremoniously dumped. So I started sorting them out. I've managed to find most of the Monty Python Lego ones. With this one, we have these notoriously rare Lego pieces that the Lego fans online were going crazy about when we first made this film, because they were like, how do you have these parts that don't actually exist? We've got this helmet and this mace that were just completely unproduced prototypes that never got released. That's the figures from Wynn, A Space Odyssey. That was our first major success in Lego after we made All of the Dead first, and then Wynn, A Space Odyssey. We had the monolith, but that was just made of blocks, so I think it's just been recycled into some other building. This is from one of Tony's first ever films. When he was a teenager, he made these proto Lego animations, which were just these completely absurd Hollywood movie parodies. And there's Sigourney Weaver from Adrian's.
Right, what's all this about?
And it was kind of really uncanny for me to see this in real life when I dug it out. It was just in a random box of Lego, and I was almost starstruck, because we watched this film that he'd made on VHS so many times. It's kind of really surreal to actually have this thing in real life instead of just being something moving around on a stick on this video. And that's kind of what started the whole Lego movie thing for us. Tony just had already made these weird Lego films, and we just completely we just thought this was the best idea ever, and just decided to go with it and make all these Lego parodies.
My name is Adam Nies. I go by Ant Bandit online. I'm a freelance stop-motion animator and a filmmaker from Atlanta, Georgia. I wanted to share the massive impact that Tony has had on my life personally through his work with Tim and Spite Your Face. Even though I've never met him nor spoken to him, he has literally changed my life forever. I was 10 years old when the Lego film Han Solo Affair came out, and I vividly remember sitting in a chair with my younger brother Aaron, just by the computer, watching it over and over and over again, just laughing, enjoying the humor, and just being entranced by what we were seeing. And we had seen stop motion like Wallace and Gromit and other claymation before, but the magic of seeing Lego toys that we owned come to life in stop motion, there was nothing like it. And all of those early films made such an impact. Even nowadays, I still go back to watch Peril of Doc Ock and Monty Python and Space Odyssey, and I just still feel so inspired by them. And those brick films really sparked a curiosity for me to get into filmmaking and be curious about that process. My younger brother and I made our own animations as kids, and many years later, I ended up going to film school, where I rediscovered my love for stop motion and Lego animation. And now I'm 30 years old, and I've been incredibly lucky to work on official commissions from the Lego group doing stop motion. And I still remember my first commissioned gig was a Lego Star Wars video, and I felt this wave of my life coming full circle from sitting in that chair, just being so inspired by what I was seeing, all the stuff that Tony was doing with that, to now being able to make my own and produce my own videos for Lego Star Wars. And I've been incredibly blessed to have those opportunities, but absolutely none of it would have happened without Tony and all of his talent and work that went into those early brick films that really inspired me to even want to become a filmmaker. All those animations are ingrained in me, and I've always said and continue to say that Tony's work is the reason why I started doing animation in the first place. I was incredibly sad to hear of his passing. I would have loved to meet him. I've heard he's quite the character, but I would have loved to share my story and just tell him how he inspired me to spend the last 20 years chasing this dream. I know he will be missed by his friends and family, so my condolences and my love go out to them. But I want them to know that his creativity and passion, it touched so many people, including 10-year-old me, who would be on a totally different life path if it weren't for him. So to Tony, thank you.
All of the Dead was my first exposure to Spite Your Face. It was horrific, but in the great way. Lots of brickfilmers start out with horror. It doesn't take a lot of plot or clever dialogue, and it lets them get their violent tendencies out in a constructive way. I'm not a big horror fan, but at the time was hanging around with people who were, and who had shown me the classic zombie films from the late 70s, early 80s, so I recognized the inspirations behind All of the Dead. But clearly, this was a cut above the usual debut for brickfilming. No one in their right mind starts out animating on plasticine ground. It had such a grainy, smeared look, and the violence in it didn't pull punches. And even though it was little toys instead of people, as a Lego fan, it actually did pull a little bit on my brain, like driving past a car wreck. Seeing that sort of gross violence with minifigs and the actual destruction of minifigs to get some of that action, that's a place I still don't go. I can't. And the music was so spooky. But then I was floored when the more pro stuff, the commission stuff, started showing up. I didn't make the connection at first. I was so envious of the quality of the work and the legitimacy of it. They had Lego's blessing, and it was exactly the general approach I always had in my head for brick films. Action and adventure, but nothing gory, and with humor sprinkled in, a little wink to the audience here and there to take the edge off. That, to me, seemed like the next step. At the time, there was no Lego movie, and it seemed like they were settling into that trajectory of becoming the go-to guys if such a project ever materialized. I didn't see a 3D Lego movie as being very satisfying. It would have to be a stop-motion project. I was wrong. I admit it bugged me a little bit that Lego was pretty much implying that a movie like that could be made with the Lego studio set. Certainly talent would count for a lot on the user side, but the studio's camera would never be able to capture images like that, no matter how you lit it or how well you animated it. It set a lot of kids up for disappointment. But that's not on Tony and Tim. Their contribution was to inspire kids to try and take on making a movie, and I think they did that perfectly. The real pinnacle for me was the Han Solo affair. It was a little slice from one of my favorite movies in the beloved franchise, and they just knocked it out of the park. The sets were gorgeous. The action was exciting and playful. It had the real sound effects in there. Chewie's roar when he pushes through the crowd. And it tied well into the existing movie. Just fantastic. I remember getting an email from the guys once. I think it was after I released Rise of the Empire, which was a fake trailer for Episode 3 done in 2002, just after Episode 2. There was a shared mutual admiration there across the ocean for what we were all bringing to the table in those early days of brickfilming, before YouTube. It was a shame that the conversation never went much further than that. I think if we'd lived nearer each other, or if the internet was a little more user-friendly like it is today, that we might have collaborated on something. I felt too intimidated to ask. But to Tony and Tim, I say thanks for leading the way, being the tip of the inspiration spear in those early days. The hobby owes a lot to you for blazing the trail in many ways. Thank you, and I hope you can rest easy.
That's a skeleton from the Monty Python film, which I can tell because it has blue tack on it. It's just like some weird relic, even though I've got literally hundreds of Lego skeletons, but that's like a special one. That's things from All of the Dead, but we hardly kept any of that stuff because it was all just really crudely painted zombie Lego people, and then they got reused for other things, but these are some of the hand-painted ones. Just seeing, just like some ribs painted on a Lego man is completely in Tony's drawing style somehow. It's just like some marks. You can tell it's him. A lot of these things are like prototypes as well. I've put them on a stupid body, but that's the Frankenstein that they gave us to make our least favourite of the Lego films that we ever made, but it's still kind of good. I remember at the time when we were shooting, we were like really annoyed that they'd sent us these like half-finished prototypes because it was really hard to hide the edges of all these stickers and things they'd used. And, because when you like focused right in on a Lego man, you can just see all these like 3D printing lines and edges of stickers and stuff. That's some like prototype ones they sent us to film again, so all these are like temporary printed stickers they just made because they hadn't actually manufactured the set yet that we were trying to make a film to advertise. So it's all super rare stuff.
So I was in high school when Monty Python and the Holy Grail in Lego came out, and I had only just discovered Monty Python maybe a year or two earlier because of the release of the TV show on VHS tape. I'm really dating myself, but it was a weird thing because there were no Monty Python Lego sets, so it was this strange sort of anomaly where it was like, what even is this? And but the animation was great, and a lot of things that I sort of gravitate towards, whether it's trying to find interesting ways to do digital mouths or just puppeting things from off camera, like the bit in that video where the knight's legs are just dancing. There was a lot in there that really spoke to me as a artist and as a brick filmer who was just trying to figure out what my style and my voice was. And then of course later on, I learned who Spite Your Face was, and things like Scary Thriller and the Han Solo Fair and the Spider-Man, the Peril of Doc Ock, both versions. Those things really meant a lot to me, not only as a fan, but as, later on down the line, someone who was trying to get into the same headspace, I suppose, when I was doing my own work for the Lego group. And I always looked to those as one of like the key sort of reference points, because those shorts proved that you could tell a story, you can make a video about a product, but you didn't need to dumb it down. You could have like really interesting gags and a storyline and really play with the format and the medium in a really interesting way that was more than just like, here's what's in the box and a bunch of wacky things happen, the end. Like there was especially with like the Peril of Doc Ock, there was a clear beginning, middle, and end. So I think, certainly for the work that I did for the Lego group at Paganimation, me and my team, the Spite Your Face folks really set the precedent for that kind of work in a time where they were really the only game in town. And I should, at this point, reveal that I was definitely one of the teenagers who emailed, I don't remember if it was the website or how I got this message, but I definitely asked if Spite Your Face was hiring. So I just want to make sure that that's on the record. And for whatever it's worth, I'm I apologize if I was one of the people who caused the website FAQ to later read, "No, we are not hiring."
Before I started brick filming in 2014, I didn't really go on the internet a whole lot, so I'd only seen a couple of like brick films. I think when I was about 10, I'd seen a couple of like very basic Lego Indiana Jones brick films, and without saying too much, they didn't really inspire me to kind of like get into the craft too much. I was, however, a big fan of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and when I was 10, I would see the Holy Grail in Lego for the first time on the DVD special features. This completely changed everything for me. Even though I wouldn't make my own brick films for another 4 years, it left this kind of impact in the back of my mind. Like, this is what is actually possible with Lego, and I could do this. I think the Holy Grail in Lego was always on my mind when I started out. And the funny thing is, I don't think I've even really thought about it much until this point. But it probably would explain why so many of my early brick films are focused around knights or recreations of music videos. Later on, as I joined Bricks in Motion, I would scroll through the Brickfilms wiki, and I was just looking through various notable brick films, and that was the first time that I would stumble upon some of the other films like One: A Space Odyssey and The Peril of Doc Ock. And for the time that they were made, I remember sort of thinking that they were always like sort of 2 or 3 steps at least above pretty much everybody else. No one was really capable of catching up with them in terms of quality, and And I think that people have only just sort of started to catch up with them in recent years. Because, you have films like Holy Grail, and it's a straight up recreation, but even that has so much charm and character to it. It's hard to even describe why it just works so well, even without the context of the original. But there is just such a charm and playfulness about the entire video, and the novelty of it being Lego. And I just feel like so much of that is just missing in so many other Lego recreation videos that I see. Maybe it's the charm of the classic knights, but it feels unapologetically Lego, and that makes it so much fun to watch. You then also have films like The Han Solo Affair and The Peril of Doc Ock, which are completely original stories. And what makes these so strong is that they don't just give you like a cool chase scene or a cool fight between two characters. They are proper short films with actual stories. There's build-up and there's payoff, and there's a clear influence from media outside of the Brickfilms. They are basically cartoons in Lego form. Spite Your Face are massive legends, not just to the brickfilming community, but I think the internet as a whole, and maybe even beyond that. It's easy to forget, because unlike today in the time of YouTube, views weren't recorded in the same way, but these videos were massive. The Han Solo Affair, the Peril of Doc Ock, and the Holy Grail in particular would have been seen by millions and millions of people all around the globe. The fact that I hardly ever went online and would still stumble upon one of their videos on special features of a DVD, I think that just speaks volumes of just how big they were and how much of a reach they had just in general. I just don't think it can be understated just how much the brick film community owes to Tony Mines and Tim Drage. Their legacy will live on for generations to come.
Some Tony's just random custom things. There's Mumra and San from Mononoke Hime with Hands Got Lost. And that was like, well, it's two different bits of things. But, he made a really good Lego Predator at some point. That's the head and legs from it anyway. To where the rest of it is gone. Found Freddy Krueger. We've made loads of like horror movie parody figures back in the day, and I think most of them ended up on screen in All of the Dead. There's Lego Terry Gilliam, who sort of kind of made this all happen by commissioning the Monty Python thing. At one time, me and Tony just had this thing of he had this kind of brilliant idea of using Lego as a character design tool. We were kind of working on ideas for a non-Lego animation, but we just sat down with the Lego and we were like putting stuff together. So you can just, you get these, you can sort of collage these different elements together and you come up with some sort of character that you'd never think of if you just sat down and tried to draw it. We ended up with like a transparent headed guy with a beard or whatever, with this pumpkin man, some sort of plant guy. And we kind of made this whole sort of cast of characters that we never really did anything with, but it's kind of like collage rather than drawing something from scratch. You have some sort of thing to go on that already exists. I've just started doing the same thing recently, just putting things together as I go through all this crazy amount of Lego that I've now got hold of. Just making these like characters, and maybe I'll like recreate them in some other form, just based on these.
I didn't know Tony Mines personally, but I absolutely knew his work. I mean, I'll never forget the first time I saw a Han Solo Affair. It was like, it was mind-blowing. I guess sort of in the similar way of like how minds were blown back when they saw Star Wars A New Hope. Because like this was something that was just totally different than like all the other brick films I had seen at the time. The way it was lit, the way it was shot, the way it was animated, it was just everything about it. And the aspect ratio was, like it was widescreen, like an actual movie. And to me, the best thing about it was the way it was animated, the whimsical nature that Tony and Tim were able to instill into the Legos, that the sort of fun way that I think we all expect Lego people to act, even when they're doing something as diabolical as, Darth Vader freezing Han Solo and trying to kidnap him. It's done in such a fun way that you're engaged. You don't even need dialogue. It's just fun from beginning to end. And that is just like, it was like, wow, I hope I can make something as good as this someday. And for me, and this is something I didn't learn until years later, they continued to have an influence on me when I started learning how to do stop motion and how to brick film, because I started with the Lego set Lego Studios. And, you know, it came with a camera and a little animation software, and it came with a whole bunch of videos of like tutorials of like the kind of stuff that you could shoot, and you could play with this stuff in the editor. And that was their stuff that I didn't know at the time, but they made those videos with the Lego Monster Lab sets and the Spider-Man sets, and those films, I mean, I tried to remake them when I was learning brick filming. Like that was my school, just trying to emulate Spite Your Face Productions. Only I didn't know it was them at the time. But yeah, that was like my brick filming school, and I've probably seen those like over and over more than any other brick film, because those are the things that taught me how to brick film. So their influence on me is just, I can't overstate it. That they were part of the reason of why I know how to make stop motion, why I enjoy doing it so much. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. You know, it's their work has had a tremendous influence on so many brick filmers, and I'm sure not even limited to just the brick filming world. I mean, you never know who's seeing your work, and I'm sure that their work has also inspired people studying, you know, every kind of aspect of animation, you know. And losing Tony is a terrible loss for everyone, but he leaves behind a tremendous legacy of work, and I'm so thankful that him and Tim got together when they did and made what they made, because it's been such a tremendous influence on me and has had such an impact on me, and I'm so thankful for their work.
So I don't really remember much of my childhood. I have a couple, a handful of really vivid memories, but the rest I don't remember too much of. But one of the things I do remember is I was about 6 maybe. I remember the first time seeing the Han Solo affair. It was the very first brick film I had ever seen in my life. And I was so young that I was still at the age where I was just like, how do they make the Legos move? Like, where are the hands in the video? Like, I was that young. Before I had seen any of the movies or anything, before I had seen Empire Strikes Back, which is still, one of my top favorite movies of all time, the first, instance of seeing anything from that was the Han Solo affair. And it was Lego Star Wars that got me into brick filming, which got me into movies in general, and get into, my eventual career path of, doing videography and my love for movies and filmmaking in general. And I can really trace it back to the Han Solo affair and what that meant to me and how cool it was knowing what was possible. A couple months ago, I hadn't seen it in, a good amount of years, when I had heard of Tony's diagnosis. And I went back, and it still holds up even more so from when I was a young kid. The animation is just so fun, and the thing I really picked up on was the music and how it perfectly just choreographs with the action and the tone and the pace and everything. That's just a testament to how universal what Tony Mines and Tim Drage did was. It could appeal to me as a 6-year-old, and it can appeal to me, as an almost 24-year-old. Like, it's still incredible what they did, and it has stuck with me, and I genuinely don't believe I'd be where I am today if it wasn't for the Han Solo affair and just starting me on this awesome path that is basically shaping my life.
We were started working on this thing called Trong, which was like a parody of Tron, and we shot it in the same way they did Tron, so we had like white costumes with black lines drawn on, and then the idea was we'd like invert it and put a load of super 80s glowing effects and things. So we shot a load of stuff of that. I'm going to do something with it, because we just never finished making it. I think we just got some paying work and then had to get on with something else and then never came back to it. I actually found on Tony's old discs like an animatic for it, which I don't think he even ever showed me. But he did a whole animatic, so that it kind of exists in some form. So hopefully I can at least recreate part of the film. And I mean, it's good to finish some of these things, or at least show them to the world in some capacity, you know, all these years later. It's kind of weird going through this stuff and just finding all these things we did that we almost forgot about. Got things from the original Lego Spider-Man things we did, which were like just a really short piece of animation to go on the CD-ROM that Lego had with the Lego Studios sets. We were going to film it in someone's basement, and then the power was like so irregular that we couldn't even shoot. Like the lights were flickering and stuff, so we ended up filming it at the university. It's just in the Star Wars film we did, we've got like the C-3PO being carried around by Chewbacca. There's like, we did a lot of modifying and gluing of Lego and stuff, which is kind of like sacrilege. I think this is, oh, it's not glued. It's kind of interesting to me that Tony's, you know, he's just unceremoniously dumped all the actual screen-used, you know, pieces of the characters and sets from the films in with just random other Lego. So I'm kind of having to, like, do detective work to find out what was the actual things we used so I can kind of preserve them.
The first brick film I ever saw was Monty Python and the Holy Grail in Lego. I think I was about 12 years old.
It's only a model.
Ironically, I hadn't seen the real Monty Python and the Holy Grail, so I really had no idea what was going on. But I remember staring in disbelief, trying to reconcile what I was seeing on screen with what I knew was possible. I saw these Lego characters moving. I knew it wasn't robotics. I knew it wasn't puppetry. That's when it really clicked in my head. I had a deeper level of understanding of how animation actually worked in that moment. And I think somehow seeing the Lego pieces kind of convinced me that it was made by a real person, not by, I don't know, magic, pure magic. Seeing those early brick films from Tony Mines was the perfect launch pad to propel me towards an eventual career in animation. And that Lego element really made the prospect of making animated movies feel more safe, more accessible. And then the stop motion element is what made it feel really challenging and magical and aspirational. So I think it really hit that sweet spot for me at just the right time in my life. Very inspired. I really appreciate Tony Mines' work and the life and the magic that he put on screen.
Hi, my name is Zach Macias. I'm a stop motion animator and a Lego animator. In the Lego animation community, I'm known as Mind Game or Mind Game Studios. I owe my entire getting into brick filming and basically subsequently my entire career as I know it to Spite Your Face. When I first discovered stop motion animation, I think this was back in 2004 because Spider-Man 2 had just come to theaters. That summer I had just learned what stop motion animation is from a friend of mine, and one day I was browsing the internet. I was on Yahoo, and on the front page there's like an advertisement for a Lego animated video promoting Spider-Man 2. So of course I clicked it and I watched it, and I mean it was the definition of a life-changing experience. You know, I was just freshly introduced to even the concept of animation, and I had never in my wildest dreams imagined what could be achieved with Lego bricks. Just like some of the scale buildings in the recreations of New York City, I There were builds like beyond my wildest dreams, and on such a scale and size that I couldn't even begin to fathom, for a stop motion set. And it's not only just the amazing production design and the set building, but the characters were animated so beautifully, and they had just this pop to them, this bounce. They were funny. The camera had this dynamic flow to it. It felt like like Saturday cartoon serial, and it absolutely blew open the doors in my mind of what was possible to do in stop motion, but like more than that, like on your own, or with a fairly limited amount of people. Because I watched that video, I lost count of how many times I watched it, and I'm watching it, and I finally put 2 and 2 together that I have buckets of Lego just sitting in my closet, just collecting dust, doing nothing. Maybe I could try to do something like this. And I mean, that's where it all started. It was the birth of a newfound passion, and I mean, from there I fell in love with stop motion animation. It became such a devoted passion of mine that I would make brick films for school projects, as I would get older, and eventually I would put them onto YouTube, and they would start to pick up some traction, some viewership there, and it kind of became like an accidental success for me in a way, because I owe a lot to those early days of YouTube, because I mean, I found a humble amount of success on YouTube, and I was able to get catch the attention of brands like SpongeBob, Star Wars, Paw Patrol, Taco Bell, Twitch. I was able to take what started as an after-school hobby that was driven by just a love of Lego and a desire to tell stories with them. Nearly 20 years later, I've been able to exist as a living, working stop motion animator for years, and I've made a number of lifelong friends and connections just through the animation community, which became the filmmaking community, which became just my assortment of colleagues and work friends, and my my crew of people who I can rely on. Filmmaking has just become such an integral and important and defining part of my life. And it's so funny to think that when it comes down to it, I feel like I can trace all of it back to 13-year-old me who happened to stumble upon this little Lego video on Yahoo one afternoon. I was so enamored by Spite Your Face and the quality of their work that I specifically sought out Monty Python and the Holy Grail on DVD just so that I could own the DVD version of Spite Your Face's Knights of the Round Table. Another one of my favorites of theirs was Star Wars: The Han Solo Affair. I can't tell you how many times I watched that growing up. It's directed just like in terms of the shot choices and the arrangement of scenes and the composition of scenes. It's such a well-directed comedy film. I would crack up every time I watched it. When we shot the Bricks in Motion documentary, I was lucky enough to get to meet Tony and Tim, and I was able to get to tell him my origin story, basically, and have the opportunity to thank him myself, and I'm glad for that. I think that's a rare opportunity that a lot of people get, but no, it's we lost Tony way too soon. I mean, that's the reality of it. He was an incredibly brilliant animator. He was one of the very best out there. His mark left on brick film, whatever you want to call it, this little hobby of ours. I say little hobby, but it's something that has really meant so much to so many people in surprisingly very profound ways. So really, all I can say is, Tony, thank you. Really, from the bottom of my heart, for everything.
This is his Hong Kong model. Yeah, this is like the Chungking Express kind of homage, but I mean it's pretty just thrown in there really, and I mean it's got all these amazing like stuff he's made, like a little newsstand and these signs and things. Originally, you know, he did want to make a Wong Kar-wai parody, but he basically resigned to making, you know, still photos. He just took really nice photos of all his things and put them on Instagram, but you can't even see half. I mean, he's built all this crazy detailed stuff. I don't think half of it is even in the photos. It's like a little drawer full of knives. Little kitchen has stuff in it. That's crazy. But it's like a bit broken up, and it's like there's no instructions for how to put it together. At some point, I would like to display it in some capacity or something, but I'll have to figure out. I don't even want to pick any more of it up in case it falls apart. It's got all like little lights in it and stuff as well. But yeah, I have to try and I'm just going to put it away in case I break it any more than it already is. I'm just confronted with things like this. This is a box of transparent parts, and there's like maybe like 2,000 like weird little flames for some reason, and I can't like message him and say, what is this? What do I do with it? Why have we got like thousands of like these things that go on like a knight's helmet or something? And he obviously just had some idea relating to like Lego flames. Because when we worked for Lego, we grabbed like huge like bucketfuls of like rare parts and just random stuff that we thought might be useful. But I don't remember these ones. Bag of insects. You can just see how organized he was. Like with his idea, you know, he had like these ideas of what to do with things, and he would just have some real system to it. So I'm trying to like maintain some of his order and not get these things too messed up, so I can figure out what to even do with them. Yeah, I'm probably just going to end up doing some Lego animation again against my better judgment one day. Here's the mini disc archives.
Oh my god.
This isn't even, well, I guess some of this is the Lego movie sound, but most of this is just my noise stuff. The Labyrinth gig we did a whole like Labyrinth themed noise show with like Tony as David Bowie. Really? Just like some piece of paper with an eye drawn on it or something, like his David Bowie costume. This was one of the points of contention, like I always thought it was a good idea to organise Lego by shape and mix the colours, because it's easier to, if you know you want like a block, it's easier to pick out a red block from a box of random coloured blocks than it is to pick out that size of block from a box of identically coloured bricks. But he had like the opposite. That was one of the few things we like, disagreed about, was like how to sort Lego. I was like, he would always like organise it by colour. Castle parts, Lego round, those are trees. The designers and people working at Lego, they were telling us that they still have to like, you know, if they want these old school like 70s trees, they still have to just go on eBay and buy them, because there's no, once the Lego's out of production, they don't still have it around. Even if you work there, you can't get it. Most Lego used to be just like red and green and yellow and whatever, and we used to be obsessed with getting like obscure colours. And when we made the Lego Star Wars movie and whatever, we just went to the Lego offices and we were just grabbing tons of like beige and you know, all these different like obscure colours that you couldn't easily get normally. Always hunting down like, you know, some cinematic colours instead of the sort of bright cartoony colours. Some vehicles. I think that's my boat from when I was a kid. I'm pretty sure that is one of my childhood ones, because I gave a lot of my Lego to Tony anyway, and got it back in the worst possible way. But yeah.
What else is worth saying about any of our films? Is there anything about the Monty Python one that's particularly notable, or?
Nah, not really. I've never understood the point of that film in 15 years. I think it's really good. I like it. I'm proud of it, but I don't understand what I remember somebody commenting on it like the first time it came out. So I don't see the point of this. It's like you've just taken a film and like, you know, done it the same. It's like, yeah, so I have. Do you know what to say to that guy?
Fair enough. Got us banged to rights.
Yeah.